it's Shilpa here from Team 1868, and in this video I'll be covering a basic introduction to variables in programming versus variables in math, which is extremely important to understand as you'll be programming the robot for FRC build. So, what exactly is a variable, and what is a variable in math? So, in math, variables are placeholders for values that you don't know. For instance, if we had the equation 2x plus 3 equals 27, x here is the variable, and it already has a preset value. It's just a placeholder for a value, and we actually solve equations to determine the values that variables carry. So if we had to solve the equation out, we would determine that x equals 12, and that's final. X is always going to be 12 in the world of math. It's never going to change, and the entire purpose of having these equations is to solve for what the value of variables like x are. Now, this is variables in math. So let's take a look at variables in programming. Now, variables in programming aren't exactly placeholders. They're more like containers, and whatever is in this container can actually change. The value of a variable must be set before it can be used. So if you think of it like a container, then something must be put inside the container in order to use the thing inside. So we have to start by putting something in this container, and that means we have to set a variable to equal a value. So to set a variable, all you have to do is write a line of code like int x equals 5, and this is the proper syntax to do it in C++. So if we have this line of code, that means every time the variable x is used, the computer will replace it with a 5. So there's going to be a value of 5 in this container. But the thing is, in programming, unlike in math, it actually makes complete sense to have statements like x equals x plus 1. Now this, if we were just looking at it in the math world, wouldn't make any sense, because how can x equal itself plus 1? I mean, imagine if we had, at this point we already determined x to be 12 over here, so if we had a statement saying x equals x plus 1, that just means 12 equals 12 plus 1, which is 13, and 12 does not equal 13, so this is a flawed statement to make, and we do not make those kinds of statements in math. But in programming, we're actually able to make such statements, and all this is really saying is that the container, which previously held 5, is now 5 plus 1. So x is just the container, and the value of the container can always change. And remember that the x being referred to here is this value of 5, because the most recent value that was put in the container was 5. So when the program runs through this for the very first time, it initially sets the value in the container to be 5. And after it does this, it moves on to this statement, which is x equals x plus 1. Now this x over here is going to be the value in the new container, but the x over here that's being referenced is actually this 5, because that's what was originally set. So in the end, it's going to output x equals 6, and 6 will be the new value in the container. But with lines of code like this, if we want to run through the program again, it's going to be taking x to be not 5, but instead x is going to be 6. So this new value of x will then be 7, and this program repeats itself. And this is because in programming there's this entire concept that variables are not set placeholders, they're merely containers, and the value within them can change. So this is a really basic concept, but it's extremely important to understand because, especially as you're working with robot code, you're always going to be manipulating variables, changing the state of variables, so at different points in the program they can be accessing different things.